just want to let you know that there's been a lot of prayer and discussion that's gone in to tonight. It's really been something that we've kind of been hoping and dreaming for over 2 years. And so it is a big deal. And we just want to ask you for your patience with the leadership team. And trust that our hearts are wanting to navigate this well. It's a unique time, a special time, but also a time that there's been where we have been, where we are present, and where we're going. And so we're trying to navigate that as best we can, knowing that a lot of you are new and you haven't been with us, and welcome. We're so excited that you're here. And then a lot of people are like the old H2O'ers, and so we're trying to figure out how to do this too. And some of them are just coming back, and this might be one of their first meetings that they're back. And so we just are trying to navigate that well and honor that.
One thing we wanted to say is just we are so grateful for this building. It's just unbelievable how thankful we are. We're also extremely grateful to God for a renewed vision that we as a leadership team own. We're very, very excited to share with you guys about that. At the same time, we are a family, and so tonight may feel a little bit like a roller coaster, but it's necessary that that's the way we go. Some of you guys are new to H2O. Some of you are new to the faith. Some of you, and by new, I mean that you've been part of H2O for maybe the past year. And you guys have no idea what a deep blessing you guys have been to us. There are also, like Allison alluded to, there are people that are not new to H2O. And we want to talk about that for just a minute here. We want you to realize something about people that are not new to H2O so that we can become a united family. Many of the people that are old H2O, their journey with us goes back not just to before COVID, but back years and years. And many of us have experienced a devastating loss of community. And so we want those of you that are new to H2O to understand that. Over the last few years, we've had friends move away to different parts of the country. We've had friends move away from H2O, maybe to another church, or some to no church at all. And the loss of that community has been heavy on us. It's been very heavy on some of the members here. So while it's true that every congregation in America has experienced a 30 to 50% decline in their Sunday attendance, that's really not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about friends that didn't just attend on a Sunday, but they were part of the same life group. They had meals together, they shared the joys and the struggles of life together. And so now, we just want to admit, as a leadership team, it feels difficult and sad for us to be moving forward when we wish that they were all here with us as well. So we just want to acknowledge that. If you're one of those people, if you're someone that's experienced that devastating loss of community over the last few years, we want you to know that we're committed to walking with you. Even though here we're talking about church launch, what we want you to hear is no. We want to do life together and walk beside you. And we know that the renovation of our hearts for some of us is just a tough climb. So we're committed. We're committed to that. So here's we talk about church launch, maybe the image that we've shown on a Sunday with a rocket going up, the missile launching. Maybe that imagery doesn't exactly nail it. There it is. For some of us, that's the way this is going to feel. It's going to be like the countdown is happening, the engines are beginning to fire, but that's not the feel that everyone is going to have. So if we could switch metaphors for a minute, because football is back, praise God, heavens. If we can switch metaphors, for some of us, we're not about to play our first game. We're not in spring practice. Some of our members here are really more like they're on injured reserve. And we want this to be a safe place for you to be on injured reserve. We'd rather have you be part of our team than feel like I can't be part of the team because they're moving forward and I'm not ready to. Does that make sense to everybody? We want to do this together. So we don't have any expectations on where everyone is at. We want to just walk together. So at this point, I've asked Stephanie Wilkinson to share just a little bit about her heart journey. After that, Steve is going to share for a few minutes, and then the roller coaster will reach the top, and we'll begin to talk about vision.
So I'm the bottom of the roller coaster. I just want to. Where am
Good
I?
clarification.
Where am I? I guess we'll see once I'm done. Hi everyone. I see a lot of new faces, and I see a lot of older, historically older, not age older faces. And I'm thankful for every single one of those. So, so they asked me to speak, and I prefer to not read directly off of a sheet of paper. However, I didn't have enough time to really reread what I wrote last night at 11:30 p.m. So I am going to, but I will try to inflect my voice for you guys so that I don't sound like a robot. So I've been coming to H2O for 15 years, which feels crazy to say that. I started coming my sophomore year of college, and I'm not in college anymore, to say the least there. It feels like a lifetime ago because it really has been. But H2O gripped me right away. I felt like it was different than any other church community that I had ever experienced, and that was for a number of reasons. But the first one I want to focus on is what I always heard new people say when they came to H2O, because it resonated with my heart as well. For those of you that recently joined our church pre-COVID, community was like our magic in a bottle. We formed deep bonds with one another. These bonds that really, they could be better described as chosen family more than just friendships. And then COVID hit, and a lot of life happened, and some of our communities went through some really big changes. I actually think back to when we were talking about this building. It wasn't even a reality that we were going to get it yet. And we had all these people in the room, and we were dreaming about the possibility of this very generous gift being in our lives. And now I'm looking back, and the people that I thought that I was going to be on that adventure with, they're not here anymore. And that's really hard, and it's a lot of emotions. So I am picking up pieces after all of that. And there's a lot of sadness and loss that I've felt over that community. And it's impacted my energy level a lot. And so when I started hearing that there was going to be a launch team, I didn't know if I had the energy to do it. I didn't know if I was going to have enough in my tank to be able to give what I thought was going to be asked of me, and it kind of freaked me out, to be honest. And by the way, I'm a board member, so there's just, a lot there. So, where am I at? I don't know how many others that have been part of our church pre-COVID are feeling this way too. And I just wanted to share where I'm at, to acknowledge that we have a wide spectrum in this room, which I'm grateful for, as we're entering this new season. So that brings me to the present time. I was honest about where I'm at right now with the leadership team. And, they asked me to share tonight with you guys. They heard that I was sad and that I was struggling. And I feel like a lot of other churches would just try to sweep that up under the rug. But they asked that I come and that I talk to all of you guys, because they felt like other people could be struggling with the same thing, and they saw value there. So, you know how I said that community was a huge reason why H2O felt different to me back when I first started coming 15 years ago? I would be remiss to leave it there. The other thing that stood out to me immediately, and through so many examples, is the heart of our leadership team. The heart that they have for people within the community. It's nothing short of a beautiful picture of what I feel like Christ called the church to live out. They love others well in the midst of really difficult things. My husband and I have gone through really hard things the last 7 years. And every single time, they have met me and my husband with grace and love, and that's been grounded in truth. And all in the midst of, let me tell you, that COVID was hard on the pastors too, in their wives and the leadership team. It has not been easy. It's not easy leading broken people through difficult times, and yet they show up all the time with open hearts and open arms to us while we're dealing with things. They live out what God has called them to as faithfully as they can. So we're back full circle. I don't know many churches that would hear that somebody's struggling and ask them to speak openly about it while they're trying to move forward into a new season. They want us to share our hearts and to live authentically with where we are. And that is why community has been magic in a bottle for us in the past. They foster an environment for us to live authentically, and that's different than many other church communities. So that's why I'm here, and it may take me a beat to really feel like I can ramp up to the level that I hope to get to with the future of H2O, and it might take some of the other OGers here that same time too. It might not, I don't know, but I can honestly say that I'm happy to be here, and I'm choosing to step forward in faith with our leadership team and the community that we have here now, and any others that walk through the door in the future. I know it's a safe space to be honest about where I'm at, and I'm also thankful for everybody that's here and that's part of our H2O community. Thanks for your sacrifice in time to come here tonight, and I'm excited to join arms with you as we start this new chapter.
But I get 15 minutes to share with you about our vision. And so we originally thought about having a question and answer time. We're not going to do that. If you have questions about our vision, which you should have, write those down. And so the next time we gather, we can address those questions. So 15 minutes, 7 different points of our vision. The main thing I want you to hear as we just begin here is that we're shifting from an attractional, Sunday-centric model to what we believe is closer to Jesus' own model of ministry. So our critique of the attractional, Sunday-centric model of church is this: that church is typically defined as a building or as a meeting that you come to on Sunday morning. And we put a ton of energy into that 1 hour. As expressed in America, a Sunday-centric church tends to create Christian consumers, people that come only to absorb some spiritual goods. And they end up being spectators rather than joining in the adventure of a mission of following Jesus. This style of church can tend to extract Christ followers from their neighbors and from a network of friends outside of Christ because we're so busy inside of the church. We don't have any time or energy for those that are outside of the church. And it can tend to create exhausted servants who are led by exhausted leaders. And so we want this chapter of our church life to come to an end. We will bury it right now and we will move forward. We don't want to be that way. We've been walking with a church planting movement called V3 for about a year and a half. And they are helping us to connect the dots between what we see in the scriptures in Jesus' ministry and how we can do church in our local setting. And so we're continuing to walk with them. But here's the 7 things that we have kind of landed on. The first is Godspeed. Godspeed. When you look at Jesus in the Gospels, you never see him stressed. You never see him anxious and fretting. He always has enough energy in his tank to walk by the power of the Holy Spirit. So the first part of our vision is a lifestyle of living at God's speed, a pace that is sustainable and includes rhythms of rest. And let me just stop right here and say, let's just look at the obvious. We're talking about a church launch team. That's what tonight is, right? Like, let's go, count down. And our very first point is, let's talk about rest. Isn't this kind of striking? When we were talking about this in our leadership team, it's like, I think the Holy Spirit is leading. It was so clear to us that what we want to change in is deep. It's how we approach all of life. We have got to live life at God's speed. So I just think that this is from God. I think many of us are good-hearted, Jesus-loving followers who live depleted most of the time. I'm not a finished product by any part of anyone's imagination, but I am learning to be fully present to God, and fully present to people, and fully present to my own heart. And much of this is because of this point, Godspeed. This is a profound life-changing shift if we can really embrace this, and we will talk in a lot more detail about this in the coming meetings. But how? How are we going to change? First of all, through our own leadership team modeling, we expect that you will hear us ask you, are you living at God's speed? We hope that you look at our example and you see a greater peace than you've seen in the past. Secondly, we plan on emphasizing seasons. So once life groups are going again, it'll be life group meeting, time out. Let's take a little break. Life group, time out. And then we'll arrive at summer and say, let's just cut back on all of our meetings and let's just have a little fun for a few months. And so we're excited about the idea of seasons. We also plan on making modest requests to serve, not desperate ones. So that's important to hear, because as we talk about this rocket going up into space, we don't want you feeling any panic in us, because we don't feel panic. We feel a sense of God's hand on us. We're going to take our time. So that's the first thing, but this principle of God's speed undergirds everything else that we're going to say. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second, a discipleship core. Discipleship core. A discipleship core as the foundation from which all of our ministry flows. Jesus did not begin with public preaching to crowds. He just didn't do that. That's not what happened. He took a season, a long season of ministering to a small group of people that ended up becoming the 12 disciples. And they did life together, and they had meals together, and they went to a wedding in Cana together. They got to know each other deeply. They loved one another really well. They formed a core of disciples. And honestly, I think that this is the opposite of what we have done. Or at least any church that I've ever led, I have failed to implement this. I don't know that I just didn't see it clearly, but Sunday service to me has been the front door. Life group has been almost equal in its importance. And when we did this thing called leadership community, we kind of scrunched that into our schedule, and it was poorly attended. And we hope that that changes right now. This is a discipleship core. Like, if you have to miss a meeting, try not to miss this one, because we want to be together and get to know one another and pray and strategize all together. That's what we see in Jesus. He really emphasized building a small team of disciples. So we're wanting to recenter our church around this. So don't think Sunday is the most important thing. This is the most important thing. Third thing, 5-2-1 living. I hope I come up with an acronym or something that is more pithy than this, but it's a beautiful thing. We want to talk about having a gathered, scattered rhythm of following Jesus. Most Christians have a rhythm of gathering together. Gathering together at life group, gathering together for a Sunday service. But very few Christians I know have any rhythm in their life at all of developing friendships with people outside of Christ. And so that makes sharing our faith a very unnatural thing because we're not friends. So when I was introduced to this about 6 months ago, and I've shared this with you, I realized if I'm actually going to follow Jesus and be the friend of sinners, I've got to change my life. And it's been difficult to do, but I've been walking in this for 6 months now. I have more friends outside of Christ than I have had 30 years. And there's a beauty to this. And I want you to see this. I hope you guys leave this meeting and go, I got to live that way. So here's what 5-2-1 is praying for 5 people a day. 5 people that you know that aren't Christians, but they're in your life somehow. And to pray that God might actually use you to influence them. So that's 5. The 2 is to try to surprise and delight 2 people a day. And the 2 is specific because 1 is a Christian and 1 is a person that's not a Christian. So to surprise and delight someone, like giving brownies to our next door neighbor, there's all sorts of expressions about this. And then the 1 is to have 1 meal a week or 1 coffee time a week or every 2 weeks or every month or whatever rhythm you can establish, whatever works for you. But it's an intentional time of just doing food together with someone that's not a Christian. So for me, what has happened is I found myself, especially with surprise and delight, my day starts with thinking about the Gospels. Man, Jesus came for me. How can I delight someone? How can I surprise someone? I find myself noticing people. Like when I get gas or when I go to Publix, I just notice people more. I have more conversations with people, and I'm more intentional about sitting down and just developing a very real friendship with those outside of Christ. So we invite you to follow us in 5-2-1 living, and if anyone comes up with some kind of a good title for what that is, let me know. Let's talk about our Sunday gatherings. We want to have a reimagined Sunday gathering that connects the church and the world. Many people are looking for God. They are. They want to find a church that's different than what they've experienced. I know this because when I got my haircut the last time, I invited my barber to God on Tap. He wasn't interested, but someone else in that barber shop said, that sounds really interesting. Can I give you my contact information? It's someone looking for God. So, personally, I don't believe we've yet tapped into what God wants to do in this room on Sunday mornings. We are being intentional with this. We've not crossed every T and dotted every I because we think on this question, what would a reimagined Sunday service like? We want to figure that out together in prayer and as a community. We want to trust that God will lead us in refining what Sunday could feel like. I do know that when we share our stories, like David Okamoto recently did, and like Carrie is going to do on Sunday, when we're vulnerable and we share our story, people have never heard a story like that before. We believe that doing meals together is part of this equation. We believe that experiencing the Holy Spirit is part of this equation, but we're going to invite you into owning this with us. Let's think through this as a community. Again, I don't think we've tapped into all that God wants to do yet, And I have a sense of expectation how God is going to lead us there. All right, next let's talk about community. Before COVID, we had life groups. And as we've already shared, a number of people have experienced a devastating loss of community. It's been really hard for us, honestly, to lead, knowing we can't do everything, knowing that we're trying to renovate a building, we're receiving renewed vision from God, and yet we can't do everything. We can't provide everything. What we do see in the future is relaunching all of our life groups at some point in time. And that brings us to this idea, polycentric or shared leadership of life group or home group communities. Some of you guys may never have thought of yourself as a leader. And you're going to be quick to discount yourself and think, no, I could never do that. But the beauty of a shared leadership is you just got to do you. You just got to be who you are. I don't have to be Steve Reed. Thank God. I would be terrible Steve Reed. You guys would come to me for counseling and you'd walk away. It's like, well, they tried to fix me. That's what would happen. You don't need to be anything but what you are. But what we mean by shared leadership is relaunching life groups with a leadership team of 4 or 5 different people. One of them might be gifted in leadership, another maybe in teaching, another might have a gift in mercy, another might be an administrator. There's all sorts of different roles in a polycentric or shared leadership team. Geese fly in a V formation, but they take turns leading. That is the concept. So I just want to challenge you for a minute on this. I think you guys have untapped gifts. I think there's a lot of people here that if you say yes, that maybe I could actually be part of a leadership team, I expect that you would say, you'd look back months later and you'd say, God's really changing me. Specifically because you're conquering your fear and offering your few loaves and of bread and fish. And he's doing something with it. All right, 2 more things. Number 6, ministry teams. What we're talking about here is a decentralized and empowered ministry teams with minimal, need to slow down on this part, with minimal leadership team involvement. We want to form teams that carry out the work of ministry within the church. So think about a team that carries out events. Another team might resource us in that 5-2-1 living. Another team might manage the building. There will be different teams that will support our Sunday service ministry. But the key words here are minimal leadership team involvement. So here's what happened. Stephanie said to us, hey, I want to give 10 hours. I got 10 hours I can give to you guys as a leadership team. And we said, well, we want to pray about it. Yes! Desperately. A week, 10 hours a week.
Hold on, let's stop though. I don't have a job right now because we're adopted.
That is a big one.
That's a big part of that. So I don't want to freak some of the OGers out here. I got you guys.
What Stephanie is helping us with is to create a new organizational chart for H2O, where the teams are over here and us leaders are not involved in everything that goes on. And honestly, we're going to need help with this. You're going to need to say to us, Pastor, back off, we got it. Because we want to really empower you guys. Some of you guys have time and an amazing amount of energy, and we've been really blessed by you. Some of you don't have much time or you don't have much energy, and we're not asking for anything that you're not ready to give. God will get us there together. But we're going to form those teams. The last thing that I'm going to just mention here is events, is that we want to have a shared rhythm of social spaces or missional engagements, fancy words for events. So we want to think through how to serve the neighborhood around us. There's a lot of ideas. I remember Tammy sharing an idea with me about a year and a half ago, and John Matthews sharing an idea about how to just have a little workshop on how to take care of your car. So many great ideas. We want to create events where people will come in this building as a first step to them eventually coming to know Christ. One example would be the Milk District Mixer that we hosted here. Small businessmen and businesswomen came into this building, and it was just a sweet time, and relationships started. Another example is God on Tap. Put a plug in there. I think God's really going to use that. Another is a life group deciding to host a Friendsgiving. So some of these events will be carried out by an events team, and some of these will be carried out by life groups as God gives us clarity on what our vision is. So, that was a lot. Drinking from a fire hydrant. We will come back and unpack and go deeper with all of those, but this vision will require shifts, and Allison's going to talk about that.
Thanks, John. So we want to take time during these 7 weeks to talk about shifts. We'll have different, it'll feel somewhat like this every time, but it will have different venues. Like we'll have different slots each time. But this part is an important part where we're talking about shifts because we're thinking, hey, and you might already have this shift. So if you do, don't hate me. So I'm just like wanting to tell everybody else about it so you can help us all. But I think as I was thinking, what do I want to start with? And I think for me, and this is probably, I want to start with this because this is one thing that I struggle with and have struggled with. And I think that I get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not struggling as much. And that's true. But then, you know, a week like this week will happen and I'll be like, whoa, I'm not as good at this as I thought. But I want us to think about a shift to know your worth and your value. The fight for truth, that even though you may be tempted to believe that you're not valuable and you're not worth things, and that because you can't do what you want to do, or you can't be what you think other people need you to be, your worth and value is never on the table. And that's what I want the shift to be. Because I think the world and Satan just goes after us because we think, and we hate on ourselves the most. And the thing is that it's twofold. You lose out, but then our community loses out. Because if you buy into that you can't do this, or you're not valuable, someone else is better at this, I'm not as good as that, then you step back. And so then we don't get to experience you, but then you don't get to experience the terrifyingly fun, trusting God to step out of the boat experience either. You will always be a child of the Most High King. That's never going to change. You have a Father in heaven that will never leave you or forsake you. Because of Jesus' death and resurrection, you are a co-heir. You are a saint, even though you sin still. It's an identity thing. You are free. You are forgiven. You are chosen. You are loved. Those are identity pieces that are given to you as a son and daughter of God. Those are never on the table. But evil wants to steal, kill, and destroy those things. And when he does, then you check out and you isolate, and then you miss out and we miss out as your community. Another shift is looking at not only who you are, because that's a lot of what you do, but whose you are. Again, you are a child of God. He lives inside you. You have the strength. And so when we come with nothing, he's like, finally. The invitation of God working in and through you, because you matter. You matter to God, and you matter to us. And we need to be everything you are today, not what you're not. We don't need you to be anything that you're not. And that's kind of hard because I feel like when I've journeyed this out, it's like the world kind of eats up broken, wounded people is what it feels like. But God's economy is different. When we are weak, He is strong. And so I think if we embrace our weaknesses and we actually allow Christ to work through us more, we will see more fruit, even though we're not feeling it. Because our trust isn't then in us, it's in our Creator. And last is a shift from, and I want you to hear this, because I was originally thinking me to we, but then as I was praying it, it's not both and, or it's not one or the other. We don't need to pit those against each other. It's me and we. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. That's the me piece. That's you and God. And then what's the next part? And love your neighbor as yourself. That's the we part. We get to do that together. So it's not one or the other. You matter. And so that allows us to be able to say, okay, wherever you are, just be a part of our family. We want you to be here and to come here and be courageous and offer where you are, because there is a place for you. And when you're not here, we miss you. The body of Christ misses you because you have a piece of God's glory that only you have. Let's risk together. Let's do this together. Jim.
So as John mentioned, thanks Allison, great stuff. There are so many things going through my mind that we're going to get a chance to talk through more in depth with each one of these weeks, but there were certain principles that Stephanie shared, that Allison shared, that are going to continue to come up as we plan and we strategize together. So this past Sunday, we did share that picture of a rocket blasting off, okay, to depict our launch meeting. And
Can you do it a little louder? Can you speak a little louder?
oh, that wasn't loud enough. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Jeez.
Thank you.
Was Allison loud enough? Yeah, she was. All right. She is better at projecting. So this past Sunday, we shared this picture of, this rocket blasting off to really depict kind of this launch and what we're about to embark on. And although that is what we're ultimately shooting for, it's really not where we're at yet. Okay? This is more where we're at. Could I actually get the picture of the rocket in the hangar? All right. This is more where we're at right now. Much more of an accurate picture. Leading up to a launch, there are hours and hours and hours of preparation, fabrication, collaboration, working together with hundreds of people, all doing their small part. And the launch doesn't happen safely without each of them using their gifts together. It truly is a group effort. Okay, some of us, probably a lot of us, have become a little bit of space nerds because we live so close to all this rocket launching stuff. Like, who is now kind of into it? When you find out about a rocket launch and you're watching it and all that. And so, it's 40 minutes away, and we observe these launches all the time. And whenever I see one, and we kind of clue into one, I think about all the tons of people behind the scenes who are like all of the sleepless nights, all of the time, who are sitting there, and I know their hearts are pounding because there's so much on the line and there's so much that they've done together. Their heart rates are increasing big time as that's going up. One of the things that we all know from watching these things and kind of being a part of it is a huge part of a launch is timing. Timing. When is this optimal time to launch? This window, right, that they talk about. When are the conditions going to be most favorable? And then, as we all know, even with all this preparation, hundreds of brilliant people, hundreds of millions of dollars spent, they are still subject to factors outside of their control. Okay? The weather, or an equipment failure, or a glitch in some computer system. And what do? They have to wait. They have to move it back on that big tractor type thing, and they go back to work to fix those glitches. Why do they do that? Because they want to launch safely. And so do we. We want to launch safely. So, when we first gathered, it was about 2.5, almost 3 years ago in our house, and we envisioned this, and Roger put together this beautiful brochure where we kind of saw, like, this is what the church could look like. We met at our house. We talked about that. I remember Mick praying, your husband praying, and just what we kind of experienced together. And we thought we would have been done with this launching a while ago. Like, we would have launched a long time ago with a lot of people that are no longer with us, that could have experienced that together. But just like in these launches, we had things beyond our control that happened and influenced the timing. We had no idea at the time that COVID would delay and interrupt all of our lives across the globe. For all of us. None of us had any idea that night of what that next 2.5 years was going to look like. So it slowed down the process. It made it impossible to move quickly. Politics, division, changed the landscape of our companies and our economy. Church plants that were ready to start at that time either did not happen, or totally closed, or delayed, like still have not happened. Many of the church plants that were about ready to happen in other cities ended, and they were not able to even make that happen. Existing churches saw 50% of their congregation leave. People had to relocate to find new jobs. People had to isolate and abandon community, and it changed everything. And so, like John said, many of the people that were in our living room 2.5 years ago don't even live here anymore. Or they have moved on maybe to another church. Others are not involved in church anywhere. It's not part of their lives. And others are here tonight, 2.5, 3 years later, still holding on to the vision. All of that stuff was beyond our control. But now we find ourselves in this new season, and it's not the way it was. We're in an entirely different landscape. It's changed. We're surrounded by different people, doing different jobs who prioritize different things. So there was no way that we could launch. But now we can move toward a launch. So, back to that next one. As I was thinking about this and doing a little bit of research, it's incredible. This Mission Command Central, there's this room where there's tons, hundreds of technicians, okay, behind the scenes, and that's just Mission Command. Then there's these other rooms called firing rooms, and there's even more technicians there. Screens all over the place. All of them are contributing. All of them are working together. They're using their gifts and their talents, and they've got to be flexible. Everything could change just like that, based on conditions or what's going on. They have these huge command rooms, like I said, and those are called firing rooms. All of these are gifted individuals, teamed together, and they do their small part. We might think, what? There's probably 1,000 people involved here. What does this one woman right here in the blue, what is she doing? Well, I guarantee she is needed and vital for this launch to happen. So, each one of us is vital to the success of this launch. So we're not even yet moving toward the launch pad. We're in the hangar. We're working on the rocket. We're going to be in this position of placing those gifted people in the right position, all of us, and then giving us this necessary training to add value to the team. So over the next 7 weeks, these 7 times that we meet, we're going to talk about how we're wired, how we're created, what's unique and different about us, and what contribution we can bring to the team. Okay? So, we wanted to kind of give you guys just, we didn't want to lay all this out like in massive detail, but just to give you some basics to start thinking about. At the bottom of your sheet, there's a QR code. Take your phone, hover over that, and watch what your phone does. It's incredible. And I'm going to do it with you. And this right here, did they come up? And it looks amazing. This right here is something that Stephanie did. Okay? So.
If it doesn't work, you can blame me.
No. All I'm saying is, Stephanie for 10 hours is like 50 hours from somebody else. Okay? And her working at 20% is about me at 90. So, these are just general categories that we're going to be looking at for teams. If you hover over, you can click on Administrator and get some basic information about that. And then we'll start drilling down into each of these areas a little more. What you laughing at?
The hand-in-hand picture, I think, is hilarious. Sorry.
There are some funny pictures on here for sure. And Stephanie's sense of humor definitely emerges. We've got the communications and marketing administrator. Tweet us on Facebook. Of course, the party planning committee. Those people look familiar. Set up and tear down teams. So each of these are general categories that we'll be looking at to develop teams so that we can share the load together. All right, and we just wanted you guys to get kind of a precursor, a look at some of these things so you can start thinking. And like I said, we are going to start getting into this in more detail. We're going to talk about our strengths. We're going to talk about how we're shaped. We're going to talk about spiritual gifts. We're going to talk about maybe even the Enneagram and how some of us work together best as teams. All right? So we just wanted to have that in your hands for right now. And we have a lot more coming. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I'm going to share for 1 minute, and then Allison is going to lead us in prayer. We already got our first volunteer. Someone texted me and said that they want to do something. So what can we expect here over the next months? We can expect difficulty, opposition, frustration, and challenges, because nothing great is ever accomplished without opposition. We can expect that. We can also expect growth in people that God uses us to influence, but also inside of us ourselves. If we take our fish and loaves and we give it to Jesus, my expectation and experience is he takes what we give him and he multiplies that. So here in this season of life, what we don't want you to feel is unwanted, unneeded, or left behind. What we don't want you to feel is pressured into something you're not ready for. What we hope you feel, we hope that this feels exciting, challenging, and uniting, like we're becoming a family. We hope that you sense that God is in this. And if we just show up, God's going to do some really cool things.